Tales of Arise is a critically acclaimed RPG released in 2021. It's got an action-packed battle system that incorporates a lot of strategic thinking, a cast of very likable, well-fleshed-out main characters, a strikingly beautiful art style accompanied by a well-designed world, with said art style fitting the Tales of aesthetic of games very well. I can see it being used in future remakes. Remake Eternia. But from what I've played, it's very good, but far from perfect. Still pretty good, but far from perfect.
By the power of water!
So I want to go and highlight the things I like the most in the game. The things that I think is kind of a bit lacking, and the things that are... Alright, let's start strong. Right off the bat, I freaking hate the intro narration. It's an element that feels alien to the Tales of series, from the ones I played at least. So many shows and games have it now. I'm Tenkuji Tako. The world was in peace until the Fire Nation arrived. But after a particle accelerator accident caused by Star Labs, I have become the fastest man alive. You know, that kind of thing. Okay, so on some of the past games, the situation of the world was not privy to us from the start. That was what we gather when we traveled through the game's world. Oh, there's a war going on. But that's the least of our problems because it's also sinking. An ancient evil possessed our friend's mother, who then, along with the ancient evil, ravaged her home planet. The intro was ultimately unnecessary, as when the story properly starts with the introduction of Iron Mask, it feels like you get introduced to Luke or Reed for the first time. Here's the situation they're in, here's who they are, here's what they're about. Continuing from the opening sequence alone, we learn so much from our main character. Iron Mask is an amnesiac slave who can't feel pain, is morally very righteous, and very contemplative of his own situation, along with the situation of his fellow slaves. And all of that was well conveyed in the opening sequence alone. And so, the game's story kicks off, thanks to the events caused by the resistance group, the Crimson Crows, and the main girl Xion. I have a lot more story-related things to say, but I'll save it for later in this video. The game is very good at developing its characters. As the plot continues, the game expands on what we know about these characters that we spend the rest of the game with. There's also another way the game expands on the characters, and that's the skits. Skits in this game are very well presented. They use manga comic panels to portray the emotions of the characters within the skit, and of course accompanied by great voice act. The skits range from the standard story connected ones, to the funny extras, to even deep character introspections. Also, never forget to hang out with your friends in camp. Although, there is a problem connected to this. The game has moments in where it deals out so many skits after a very long cutscene, and it gets very tiring. In my opinion, in those moments they are not very spaced out well, and it just sends it consecutively. And when you think it's over, it brings another batch. As I said before, the game really is good at fleshing out the characters, but there are just times that it overdoes it. Luckily, all skits, cutscenes, and events can be skipped in the game, and even if you do skip skits or cutscenes, you can still revisit them at any point of the game. Unless we're talking about the events, in which I would define as in-game, in-engine cutscenes that hold a lot of plot. These are the most used cutscenes in the game, and it's kind of sad that you can't revisit them. And by sad, I mean inconvenient for me.
アルフェン、状況を分かっているのか？今この瞬間も魚たちが食べられなくなっているのよ。
だから落ち着いてってば。親玉ズーグルがいるなら準備が必要でしょ。
確かにそうだな。負けるわけにはいかないものね。
負けそうな気はしないけどな。
You might have just noticed in the previous clip that the characters are talking Japanese. This game gives you the option between English and Japanese voiceovers. When I first started the game, I chose the English voiceovers by default. I don't think there's anything wrong about it. It's well acted, but here, let me compare a scene with both voiceovers.
I want to fight.
But for what? What are you fighting for?
To free the Dahnans from the yoke of their abusive oppressors. To no longer die at the whim of another. To break the shackles of our enslavers. To live and taste freedom!
Now you're talking.
戦いたい。
何のためにだ？何のためにお前は戦う？
俺たちダナが俺たちを虐げる奴らの言いなりにならないため、奴らの都合で死なないためだ。奴隷じゃなくなるため、生きるため、自由に生きるためだ。
よく言った。
Iron Mask delivered the speech differently in the two voiceovers. In the Japanese voiceover, he sounded compassionate without sounding really angry, which I would say is a bit more subtle. The English voiceover, however, kinda sounds overacted. I don't think this is the actor's fault though. For the most part, the line delivery sounds okay. The lines from the English translation sounds flowery and unnatural. It doesn't sound like what a normal person would say at that moment. It kind of sounds like that pretentious guy you know from high school. It kind of even sounds like what a politician would say in a campaign. It just doesn't sound right to me. So I chose the Japanese voiceovers because I think it sounds more natural and subtle. Unlike me right now.
油断するな。と、あっ、何考えてんだよ。何考えてんだよ。死ぬかと思ったぜ。こういうのは思い切りが肝心だ。
降りても安全って分かってたのね
滝の下には大抵滝壺があるの。
え大抵であんなことさせないで
The implementation of the music in the game is a bit weak. It's a bit hard to explain, but when your party fights in the game, when they call out moves, the music almost mutes. God forbid you're doing a lot of hits in a combo, because if you are, you're not going to hear anything other than the sound effects. Not that they're bad, I really do think the sound effects in the game are fantastic. Every hit and every strike, every magic spell cast has a really great sound effect behind it. It's really satisfying to hear. My biggest issue with the implementation of the music in battles is that there is almost no balance. I want to get to enjoy the voice acting along with the music and the sound effects. I really don't know what happened to my experience in music in this game, because I really do think that some of the tracks in this game are really good. In case of the battle themes, I know I screwed up the audio settings for this game. Especially after reviewing some of the clips I got from this game, the audio seems to be balanced fine. The audio balancing in my game was just weird, which was, I think, it's mostly my fault. It was only in the post game that I was able to finally get the best audio setting, which is 90 for music and 60 for SE and voice. With that setting, I was able to make it sound a bit more balanced, for the rest of my game at least. By then, I was able to appreciate some of the music a bit more, especially when I tried to listen to the music of Arise in YouTube. Especially the battle theme, which I think is one of the best tracks in the game, which had to be since you listen to it for most of the game, not that you can with the balancing issue. And the music is good for a reason, because it's composed by Motoi Sakuraba. He's a regular in the Tales games and has always outputted great music. The man has hundreds of music credits including Star Ocean, the Tales of series, and the Valkyrie Profile franchise, which in my opinion is where his best work comes from. And speaking of best work, one of the best tracks in the game plays at the guest boss fight. If you play the game and you've reached this point, like I have, It is really one of the best themes in the game. But here's the thing. Besides the battle themes, I don't remember all of the other music. Only the battle themes made an impact to me. The village themes I don't remember all that much. The dungeon themes I don't remember all that much. All of the ambient music I just found serviceable. Tell you what's not standard in this game: the combat. The combat in this game is fantastic. There is a reason the demo gave you so much tools to play with. The devs were so confident in their design of this game, they just said, here's how our game feels, knock yourselves out. It lets you practice as much combos as you want, and it's really fun to pull off. Although, early in the game, since you don't have enough tools to play with, it's a bit samey and repetitive. But when you do get to the point where you have enough tools to play with in this game, it's one of the best action style combat in an RPG that I've played recently. It's really exhilarating. I recently cleared the game on moderate difficulty, and I had a great time. The combat emphasizes on combos, dodging, and teamwork. On higher difficulties, from moderate to unknown, the game punishes you hard for getting too greedy and mashing too much. It's fast-paced but strategic, and from what I've experienced, not overwhelming. It encourages learning and mastering of the combat mechanics, then experimentation and expansion of them. It feels akin to the classic Tales of Battle systems. And even though I still prefer those, I love that years of experimentation got us to this new combat system. The only thing I can't tolerate here is the evasion. The game does not allow you to cancel your moves, so when you press an attack button when you're gonna get hit, you're gonna take the damage. There are also times where I press the evade button, but somehow it doesn't trigger when I want it to. I think this has something to do with the command queuing system in the game, but I'm really not sure. I'm playing on the Steam version with an 8-bit DOE controller on a wired connection. I'm not really sure why my evasion inputs don't occur when I want it to. There's also skill panels on this game which are pretty cool. They're expanded from the game's title system, which is a really good idea. Though I'm a bit peeved that titles no longer give you costumes. Costumes are gained via quests or just buying them. What you can learn from these skill panels are pretty cool. You can get base arts, passive skills, and boosts. The only problem is that there isn't really much customization, and SP costs are really high with the acquisition very low. Luckily, the cooking system makes up for this since some of the recipes grant you SP boosts after battle. And with that, I think it balances out with the number of skills you can actually acquire in the game. Most of the self-expression you will do in this game would come from the battle system. Now, I really do have to mention this. This game has a problem with the team's AI. How you can customize how your teammates behave in this game is severely limited. We've gone from take your distance and do only these to now where your party can't even focus targets. Your allies will sometimes cast healing spells in the enemy, and they can't even disrupt enemy spells by themselves, except for when you use one of the character's abilities, which I think they did to compensate for a smaller battlefield. But you're going to notice how annoying this is for boss fights with multiple targets. Your allies will just veer off targets and hit randomly, not focusing on reducing numbers but instead almost balancing the boss's HP within the same levels. One final gripe in the gameplay I have would be all the nerfed items. They are not just nerfed, they're also very pricey. Not help that you no longer get any money from fighting, instead you have to sell items and clear quests to get money. This causes you to grind more in the game since the items you gain you also need for weapon crafting, which is a very important part of the game. And I think the devs know this since they removed the spawns of the enemy soldiers in the game except for one, in where you'd only get I think 10,000 gold, which is equivalent to one healing item in the game. And that's really annoying. To solve the issues with money I'm getting in the game, I had to use a recipe in the game that increases the drop rate and grind bees in the final dungeon. It doesn't sound that bad, but that's where most of my time in the late game went.
この絵の制服なのよね。そうだな。自分用に色々と調整してあるが、背中大胆ね。この絵たるもの、決して敵に背は見せんという覚悟の表れだ。その分軽いし、手入れも楽だしな。テュアハリムはどう思ってるの？
服装については各々に任せている。
I'm now going to move on to my biggest problem in the game. This is in my opinion one of the biggest flaws in the game. Something to do with the rival villain character, which I sadly kept spoiling the game. Alright, so some of the tactics the lords do to create astral energy do not make sense. I say some, but it's really just the Sephiroth wannabe Volran. When you first go into his dungeon or village, Volran has his villagers wear weird masks, which at first I thought was to control them. They then praise his name and queue for death. He did this in several boats, which one of the characters mentioned was something to rile up the main character with, which really confuses me. What's their day job like? A water treatment plant? There's no other people in the city. The guards are almost non-existent, which is the game plays off as a show of power from Volran. My confusion would be helped even after this chapter, since they just act like newborns that's come straight from a cloning facility, which I've heard they are not. There are stragglers from this community and they were even able to make a village of their own. One of the villagers was even able to make a relationship with one of the soldiers, which is so weird. We later learned that they're not mind controlled and just conditioned that way. Before this point in the game, we've had rebels who would rather die than serve the lords. And now we literally have people who are conditioned not to think for themselves? Were they born yesterday? We later learned that the conditioning was from sheer fear of death and pain? I think that severe gaslighting would only happen if you were conditioned to be this way from the day that you were born. But some of them are not. Because as I said, there were stragglers that were able to make a village of their own. And I'm pretty sure some people would rather off themselves than to queue for death. So, I haven't really gone to Volran yet, but let's finally head to the final villain of this game. No, it's not Volran, it's a giant space monster. This game has a very weak main villain in the form of the Great Spirit of Rena, who's just a kaiju with no personality, no links to the cast. Although I have to mention that there's also a Great Will of Dana. And the two of these are literally just, one is all for one and the other is one for all. The Renan spirit is all for one and the Danan spirit is one for all. Okay, so you go through the final dungeon and defeat the space kaiju. He's pretty and then from out of nowhere, like Randy Orton eyeing a championship title, Volran jumps out of a spaceship from out of nowhere. How did he get here? The last time you saw him, he was exploding. You literally saw the bastard burn. And there he goes, somehow getting a starship of his own and crashing the final battle like the Sephiroth wannabe he really is. The fight with him even feels like the Sephiroth fight. And you do fight him, where you just spam special attacks until his HP hits 0. You're invincible in this fight too. Volran is just there to literally blow himself up with the MacGuffin your party's been chasing after, ruining your plans until, of course, the Will of Dana pulls a Genki Dama Spirit Ball and lends Dana's strength to the party to an honestly a very beautiful ending sequence. Okay, I lied. There is another issue I have in this game. The post game. In the quest Otherworldly Visitors, besides the point of the quest, everything else they did was goddamn annoying. Yes, you put in the Tales of Destiny battle theme, and it sounds really good. But it ends with Edna with Tales of Systeria, who has nothing to do with Tales of Destiny. And they really shouldn't have done that. That crossover side quest where Edna and Aizen, two beloved characters from previous games, are reunited finally. And you get to fight them with what I said is one of the best tracks in the game. This was something Zestiria and Berseria fans really want to see. Because, spoilers, Edna and Aizen never shared the screen. Except for that time Edna saw Aizen as a dragon in which they have to kill it. I don't know, I haven't finished the series yet. But why did they put Destiny, Symphonia, and Abyss Rifts? If you're not even going to put characters of monsters from those games, why do you need to put those names there? Why put the music in? It's absolutely baffling, and I would have loved it better if they just stuck with Berseria and Zestiria. Because as I said, the ending of the side quest is really good. And if you wanted to, you can fight them an unlimited amount of times. Just feels kind of shameless to put those names there. And if they used that remix theme in some of the earlier rifts in this side quest, I would have loved that. I do like it that I get to listen to the Tales of Destiny battle theme, but it would have been better if they just stuck with Edna and Aizen. And also there's Kronos from Xillia 2, but he sucks as a boss and it just exists to get you to level 100. And level 100 gets you to one of the other best side quests in the game, which I would now have to ask myself. Kronos, just... you suck. So why did I stick to this game? How was I able to endure the terrible ending? I've really spoiled enough of this game. So if you're still here after hearing my rant about Volran and the end game, thank you so much. But I really want to talk about my favorite character, Zephyr, who, if you've played enough RPGs or exposed yourself to a lot of media, he has so much flags waving above his head. You'd swear he's played by Sean Bean. So why the Sean Bean comment? At the start of the second chapter of the game, they made him a pillar of not just the Crimson Crows, but your party as well. Zephyr is the leader of the Crimson Crows, and he mentors Iron Mask on things like how he should spend his freedom, to resting after fights, and even one of the rarest traits of a leader, to question his authority. He accepted Shion into his ranks, though she is a Renan and a natural enemy. He's willing to put his ass on the line as a decoy. I knew from those moments he was going to die, but it was how they executed his death that really cemented my decision to stick with the game, however it goes in the end. So in the second chapter you meet Rinwell, who faints in front of Iron Mask, now Alphen, and Shion. You collect medicine to make her better, and then she tells you her city needs help, and she leads you there. On the way there, you get the scenes in where Zephyr mentors Alphen in different aspects of life. He's also very good to Rinwell, in which he treats her like a daughter of sorts. And he treats Shion with respect. Shion, who's a Renan, as I said, was the enemy of their people. Rinwell mentions that the people in Cislodia no longer trust each other, as besides the harsh labor in the cold, the Lord Ganabelt incentivizes people who talk down to his rule to rat on each other. They are also under constant surveillance by his militia, the Snake Eyes, and any small rule broken gets you sent to a labor camp. Oh god. It's really a good day in the glorious Republic of Cislodia, isn't it? Anyway, you reach a village called Messia 224. That's not a name, that's a serial number. Where you get ambushed by the said militia, led by Zephyr's son, Lo. And Zephyr, he shields your team until you get away, and he gets caught. Alphen and Shion escape with the reveal of Rinwell's astral arts, and now you head to Cisloden to meet the Silver Swords and their leader, Menek, who is totally not evil, guys. My character design is totally not on the nose. I'm totally not going to betray you. You meet Logan in town, and he informs you that Zephyr will be executed in a few days. Then the Resistance hideout gets raided by the Snake Eyes, and you escape through the mandatory sewer level. You then learn that the execution is not happening in a few days. It's happening now, right after you've escaped from the sewer, and I'm going to stop there. Honestly, this is one of the highlights of the game, and I'm choking up just thinking about it. It shows how much respect the writers give to each character. It's inspiring, infuriating, and it's heartbreaking. It's definitely something you need to experience for yourself. And this is just one of many beautiful character moments in the game. And that epilogue, for how terribly bad the ending sequence is, the epilogue is more than worth your time. It's so cathartic and heartwarming, and it feels so earned. It feels like the party worked so hard to earn that ending. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Tales of Arise. This is an absolutely great game. Although it does have, in my opinion, an average story, though it does have great characters, though they have average chemistry, Tales of Arise has great gameplay and has great moments in the game. At this moment of recording, the game is nominated for Best RPG. If they win, it's totally deserved. So thanks for letting me ramble for a few minutes in your life. I really want to get better at talking. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do these things. I'm currently playing SMT5 and enjoying it very much. I hope you have a great day. Bye.